it and what I hope happens from this show. So my name is Christy Tennant Crispin, and my husband Carl is actually in New York right now, which is where I lived when we met. So there's great irony going on right now. But he's there. He had promised to go and help a family that was dear friends of mine and had their house devastated by Hurricane Sandy. So he's over there doing that good work and missing our art show, but that's okay. That's okay. So about 12 years ago, I was walking to my car in Brooklyn. I lived in New York City for 12 years, and I was walking from my friend's apartment to my car in Brooklyn. And if any of you have been in New York City on trash day or the night before trash day, you know that the streets are lined with large garbage bags full of garbage, and it's just kind of part of the scenery there. Well, this one particular night, it was about midnight, so most people had already put out their garbage for the next day. And as I was walking to my car, I couldn't help but notice there was a big canvas on top of a pile of garbage. And it was a painting someone had thrown away. And so I stopped for a second and I looked at it and I looked around. I thought, how did this land here and why hasn't anybody picked it up yet? So I made sure that no dogs had peed on it. That's the first thing you have to do when you're garbage picking in New York City. And sure enough, no dogs had gotten there yet. So I took that painting home and I really felt like I had hit the jackpot. At the time I was living in East Harlem. I was a struggling actress. I had no money and I had just gotten my first apartment by myself. So it also had no decorations, very little furniture. So this piece of artwork meant a lot to me. I hung it on the wall and began to actually decorate my apartment around this piece of art that I had found in the garbage. Well, as time went on and I lived with this painting, I started to actually really think about the person who had made it. And I started to think about the fact that they would never know that their painting was in someone's home and it was loved. And it started to actually make me sad. And I think that was the first time that I really started to care about not just the art and not just how I felt about the art, but actually began to think about the people who made the art. What I didn't know was that a few years after that, I would actually get a job working for a nonprofit arts organization, and suddenly I would be surrounded by artists. And so over the last several years, I've gotten to be friends with a lot of aspiring, emerging, and established artists, and I slowly began to pick up their work. Sometimes it was in an art auction where I happened to buy a $75 ticket and got to select a piece of artwork from what was there when they called my number. There are a couple pieces like that. Some of them were pieces that I was gifted, artists who gave them to me as appreciation for something that I had done through my work at the arts organization. And then some of it was art that I bought. And I remember the first time I spent, $200 on a piece of artwork, and I thought, wow, I never thought I would spend $200 on art, but it was not difficult at all to part with that because I knew the value of having this beautiful work in my home. And over the last several years, that number has gone up as I've been able to, and it's just exciting to kind of feel the value of buying something and bringing it home, living with it, and having it actually shape my home, so that when people come into my home, or our home, I should say, they are actually experiencing the collective beauty and the relationships that I have and now we have with the artists behind this work. So about 4 years ago, the man who painted this little square piece and this fish up here that you might miss if you're not looking for it, it's tiny little, he's an artist named Mako Fujimura, and he's a Japanese-American artist, and he actually said to me, as he heard me talking about the art that I was beginning to collect, you should actually do an art show. He said, you should do a show and talk, come on guys, you should do an art show and actually talk about the work. And I tucked that little seed behind, and I thought, maybe someday I'll do that, And then I started coming to Dub C and actually got to know Sybil, and I mentioned it to her, hey, if you ever find yourself with no artists to show, I'd love to show our collection of art. And so it worked out that she gave me a slot to do that, and So I've actually written some essays about each of the pieces that are here, and I encourage you to take one of the catalogs that are here and read up on it. I also put information about all of the artists who you see here because none of these pieces are for sale, but if you like anything you see, the artists would be very happy to hear from you, I'm sure, and they would probably be happy to ship wherever you are, so you could certainly reach out to them. And my goal is really just that we would think differently about not just the art, but about the artists who make the art. And that people could begin to think like art patrons, even if all you could afford to spend on art is $25 or $50. There are artists who would be very happy to negotiate that with you. And if you start there, I'm going to tell you it's a little bit like crack cocaine, because once you start, not that I've ever tried it. Do you even say crack cocaine anymore?
You do.
I do.
You did, in fact.
I also use words like street cred, and apparently when I say street cred, it gives me absolutely no street cred. But if you start there, I pretty much guarantee that you'll fall in love with not just buying art, but with developing relationships with artists and getting behind them. And I also want to make the point that my view of art patronage is really well beyond the financial aspect, although that's part of it, and I think we should always be generous to artists. Art patronage, sometimes artists just need cheerleading. They really need legitimate cheerleading, and this is the case for artists of lots of disciplines, writers, actors, musicians, whatever. They need people to ask them, what are you working on? What are you doing? You know, how can I pray for you if that's your game? You know, just whatever. So I hope that that gives you something to think about tonight. I think probably most of you in the room have already been thinking this way, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir. But feel free to take a catalog if there are any left at the night. Feel free to take two and pass it on to somebody.